All right, thank you folks for joining us today. We've got a lot going on today. I think you are going to like what it is this discussion, this podcast is going to be all about. This is Mainline Executive Coaching ACT. This is about you, the leaders, getting in the main line, getting it into you, getting it into your system, getting it into your culture, and being that outstanding leader that you got to be, that you just got to become, you must become. And ACT and cultural transformation. Our guest today is all about cultural transformation from the top down. I'm here today with my partner, Rich Bear, and I'm Michael Bailey, and we've got Deric Keller here. He's going to be the guy that's going to be voicing a lot of this today, and we are indeed excited to have him with us. Let's start here, Deric. Before we get into the whole business end of this whole thing, I think people would be very appreciative and would like to know your background. Let's go back to your military background. Let's give you about 120 seconds. I know you're a guy that's on top of it, wants to make sure things get done in a certain amount of time, right? We're not going to waste any breath. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes here, unload that whole thing, and then we'll pick it up from what you're doing now.
Okay, so military background. I was in the Marine Corps, stationed in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Did a couple of deployments. Went over to Iraq. Was my final deployment before I got out. From inside of Iraq, I went from, being a squad leader to being a platoon leader by the end of it. It's kind of crazy to think about how everything happened. I haven't really talked about that much lately, but military background was, a huge thing for me because it built success, it built leadership, it built accountability, it helped transition me into a whole bunch of other things because I came to the field with being accountable and having that leadership of myself, first of all.
And then you left, and then is the story you told to us is you left the military and then you got into the car business of all things.
Right. Yeah.
I'll build the story here,
the car business definitely wasn't where I thought I would go. One of my good friends talked me into trying it out, and he said that I needed a break from all the things that I did in the military. I needed to go do a desk job for a minute. And going to the car business was probably one of the best things for me because it forced me out into talking to people when I wanted to go hide in a shell. So it was definitely a huge transition for me. And because of the leadership tools and the accountability that I brought to the table and just doing the things that I said I was going to do, it allowed me to grow very quickly inside of the business. I ended up having my own store inside of the organization, running the store within a year. I was the youngest manager that they had. And through that, I used that as a vehicle to implement multiple different tools as far as changing just the way that the car business operated. I wanted to make sure that customers were taken care of. So I changed my salesmen from off of commission, put them on a salary, changed their title to customer experience manager so that their whole focus was on the experience of the customer. We ended up changing that dealership from selling, 60 to 80 cars a month to doing 250 consistently. We were really fired up about the different transitions and the different things that we were doing. We implemented a business operating system there called EOS, which was kind of the beginnings of what we were doing. And it really fit in well, helped us build culture, helped us build who we were as an organization and make the right hires and do the right things. Then we kind of ran into a little bit of a blockage with EOS and had to pivot and get some different tools and add some new things. Ultimately, from there, I ended up leaving the car business and starting my own coaching and consulting business to first help veterans transition from combat to home. That really didn't fund the lifestyle that I was looking for. So I decided that would be more of a passion project, and I would do a lot more donation and helping out on the side rather than trying to make that my main source of income. So from there, I took the knowledge that I had, the ability that I had, and started to implement sales, leadership, and operating systems into different organizations throughout the whole U.S.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's a great rundown. Before we get into the actual business that you're in, it's Exit Momentum. That's the name of the company. That's also the website that they can go to and start checking out. Fabulous website. Lots of great information there. You can tell these people have got some real breadth and some real depth to what it is they're doing. Some real experience in this stuff. Let me ask you, Rich, what is it you want to bring to the table here and what Deric's got to offer?
Well, I'll tell you what we want to talk about today is about that comfort zone. Really, there's rough waters ahead. What are you going to do? And it's not so much when you build an organizational culture, it's not so much about what you're going to do, but how you're going to do it. What kind of tools you're going to implement that you're going to get you to that next level. It's there's a lot of lip service going around. Like, we got a great culture. We work together. We do this, we do that. Great teams. But how do you do that? What tools are you actually using? What's going to help you get to that next level? What's going to help you draw everybody into communicating together? And when Deric and I talked last week, there's a lot of things that we were really on the same page about, talking about how, these tools that you can implement and develop communication around the board, around the company. And I guess a lot of my thoughts today and a lot of my comments are going to be for senior leadership of organizations. Specifically, what are you doing within your organization to prepare for these rough waters that are on the way, if they're not already here? There's business is changing. It's changing drastically. Since 2020, we've seen a lot of different changes. So really, what are you doing other than just maybe stating, yeah, we got a great culture? What actual tools are you implementing? And so maybe back to Deric, you've seen a lot of this. You talked about EOS. Unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system, and then we've transitioned from EOS to Pinnacle, and then we've expanded that toolbox even more. It's the big thing inside of this is making sure that you have a clear operating system, and when you go into any kind of rough waters, having an operating system, you're going to be able to see things before they happen. Essentially, right? You're gonna by operating inside of lead measures, making sure that you're watching the numbers, making sure you have, a good weekly meeting, that you're going over your scorecard and have that weekly cadence of really looking and operating inside of things. It changes the way that you run your business. One of the ways that we operate, one of the first things that we implement is the 5 leadership abilities, right? And the 5 leadership abilities are simplify, delegate, predict, systemize, and structure, right? Now, when you look at just the first one, simplify, like, communication across the board is outrageous, right? When it's just one-to-one person, it's very simple. There's not all the confusion, all the different iterations of what the person might have said. But just adding one person makes it 300 times more complex, right? So just adding that one person makes it 300 times more complex. So how many people are in your organization? Is it thousands of times more complex than just that one other person, right? So as we start to transition and start to do things, we have to make sure we're simplifying and making sure that we're speaking the same language, because so many times we can say something and it gets lost in translation, right? So we have to simplify, make sure that we're speaking the same language. We have to make sure that we're able to delegate and we're able to let things go. We're not trying to hang on to everything. Us, as startups, founders, beginning CEOs, like, a lot of times they want to keep a stranglehold on everything, and what they end up doing is holding the business back because they're not allowing things to happen, right? I had one company that had to actually sign a check for a Bic pen. Like nobody in the organization could go buy a Bic pen without him handwriting a check like that. If you look at what kind of stranglehold that puts on the business, it's insane. Like it just holds everyone back. We want to be able to predict not just long term, but short term. So many people get lost in the long term, and when they're looking at the long term, they get so they get analysis paralysis, right? Trying to figure things out. So being able to predict that short term, bring it back to what are the milestones that I need to hit on the way to going where I ultimately want to go. We have to systemize, put the right systems, the right scorecards in place to make sure that we're watching the right numbers, make sure that we're watching the right things. We want to make sure that, we're not waiting till the end of the month to look at that lagging indicator to decide to make a change. We want to see things as they're coming and be able to predict and see how things are operating. And then ultimately structure, right? So we like to blow up the traditional org chart because the org chart really doesn't necessarily put people accountable for things. So we blow up your org chart and put what we call an accountability chart in place to make sure that everyone's accountable for something. Because if we have multiple people accountable for the same thing, nobody's really accountable. So we have to make sure you can be accountable as one person for multiple things. You just can't have multiple people accountable for the one thing. It just doesn't work.
All right, that's excellent. Anything more? I've got some questions I want to ask Deric.
No, I just all these tools that Deric is talking about is so critical for having a good culture in an organization, because without these tools, without the things that Deric's talking about, you end up getting siloed. You end up with departments getting siloed. They're trying to develop their own tools, trying to develop their own processes, trying to develop their own way of thinking, even though they say, yeah, our company's got a great culture, we got a great vision. But if nobody has a specific tool that everybody can go to and use, and this is kind of what Deric is talking about, you end up developing all these random tools, and then when you try and get them to talk to each other and departments to talk to each other, it becomes a train wreck. And therefore becomes, you get culture breakdown, all sorts of issues. So yeah, I think this is a very important thing to discuss.
Well,
so
Rich,
what is it, Michael? What do you think about this?
Deric, go ahead. You had a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Rich, I mean, inside of that culture and inside of the core values of the way that people operate and being able to test your people off of them core values and make sure that they fit, right? One of the big things that we do is make sure that we have the right people in the right seat and that they're the right person for the organization. And when we go through this tool, like that's another one of them simplifying things, right? So many times I walk into an organization and I talk to an owner or even general managers or CEOs or COOs, and they have no idea what their core values are. A lot of times they have them written all over the place on these walls, but the problem is that they're these core values that they're aspirational core values, like we want to become this, instead of what they actually are. And nobody feels it. Nobody is a part of it. So it's just this big, long statement on a wall. I like to simplify it, make it simple, make it who you are. And let's drive to that force. And then we can start to get aspirational in some other things.
And make sure they're the right core values.
Right.
I found this on a Chinese cookie and it.
Yeah.
It's been working so far.
On the wall.
That's right. So, let me ask you this question: how many people or how many businesses come to you that are like, a deep kimchi here? We got to do something. And how many of them are going? We're going great. It's been a great move, great rise. Everything's going great. We want to just tweak it. So, how many are in deep trouble, and some just want to kind of tweak it? What percentage?
I would say that probably 30% of them are in deep trouble. The majority that we get are people that want to tweak and want to grow. The cool thing about the people that are in deep trouble is it's usually pretty easy to go in and implement and get things going. The tougher ones are the ones that already have a working system, and you're trying to change a little bit of things. Then they're not so open to. They're open to this, but they're not open to this, and they don't understand that things have to work together. So
that's interesting, because I would have thought it would be much more people, much more in trouble. We got to do something, because we've been watching the lagging indicators, and they're piling up bad. So we got to do something, as opposed to those that we think we're already pretty cool. When it is a tough thing when you've got a young leader who has not had any hiccups. It's just been a smooth ride, and they're just going up the elevator. They are the most difficult people to reach, because they already got it handled. They just haven't had the drop yet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the great thing about a lot of these younger entrepreneurs, is that they're all kind of built for coaching. There's so many different coaches and things out there that they're more built for that, being open to the possibility of somebody knowing something.
Yeah, that's good. That's really important.
Yeah, the tough thing is that these companies that are in real trouble, they don't want to make an investment in anything else. When in reality, if they would just make that investment, I mean, it goes back to the age-old adage from like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? Where he's talking about sharpening the saw. He's walking by the guy, and he's trying to cut down the tree with a dull saw. And he's like, hey, man, if you just slow down, sharpen the saw, you'd cut that a whole lot faster. He's like, I don't have time. And he's
yeah.
And it ends up taking him, 10 times as long. But that's something that comes up with a lot of these people that are in trouble, is they can't seem to figure out, hey, if I spend the money here, it's going to help. Just like, most organizations, when sales start to fall off, the first thing that they cut back on is marketing. Like,
yeah.
What are you doing?
It really is, because I mean, it's that very, mind think kind of stuff that got them there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to change. We don't got to change, because whatever they make up. And now you're asking me to change when we don't already believe we don't got to change, even though the boat is sinking.
Mm-hmm.
So at some level, and whether it's they're in that's a great place, or they're in a great place, someplace, it sounds like, what I've seen and what we've talked about here, is they've got to be able to take ownership for what it is. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever way it's going, up or down, sideways. They've got to just be able to own that, and then stand back and objectively put themselves in a position with your people to come in to start asking some critical questions.
Right.
What's really going on, not what we think is going on, what we wish is going on, not what we hope is going on, but ask some really tough questions to get to, this is what it is, therefore this is what we'll do next. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, we want to manage to the facts, right? We don't want to manage to everyone's feelings. And when we're operating inside of feelings, we know where that gets us. It usually gets us in all kinds of trouble. So by operating inside of the facts and looking at the scorecards, looking at your clear financials, getting your financials right, and seeing where you ultimately are, I mean, it's like I've said 100 times, if you don't have a clear foundation to start from, whether it's bad or good, if we don't have a clear foundation, we don't have a starting point. We're never really going to know where to go.
If it's all slump, where are you going to build? So here's the deal. When somebody brings you in to say, let's start taking a look at that, you're going to do some things. It sounds like you're going to give, do some assessing, kind of talk about it. And then just kind of, from the time they say, yeah, we got to do something, just pick that up, Deric, and walk us forward a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, we go through what's called a fit meeting. We'll sit down, we'll ask you some questions. Doesn't cost you anything. It's 100% free. We don't charge you to sit down and run through some questions and possibly teach you a few things along the way. The idea is for both of us to get something out of it and make sure that we're a fit, right? If either I want to work with you and you fit kind of what I need, which is, people that are willing to learn, people that are willing to be honest, people that
wanted to do something.
Yeah, that will take action on the things that we want to implement. And from there we say, okay, we're a fit, let's go. And we go into what's called an implementation phase. And in the implementation phase, we spend one whole day off site. It's ultimately 3 days, but day one, we spend off site all together in a room, and we break apart everything and take a look at everything and say, all right, here's where we're going. And we start to build the roadmap of the scorecard. We start to build the accountability chart. Make sure that you guys have a clear accountability chart of who's accountable for what. We set clear rocks, clear targets for them to go chase for the next 90 days. Then we give you 30 days implementing them tools and trying to make them kind of work. And we come back and visit in 30 days and we review the tools that we implemented, how they're working, what's not working, how we can adjust, what scorecard items need to change. And then we start to roll in more tools like core values and your vision statement and your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal, the big thing that you're chasing 10 years out. And we start to really define who you are as an organization. We identify your ideal client, who you're marketing to. We start to really define your whole process. We give that to you for 30 days.
Now, before you go on, something you said earlier, before we came on the air here, was that what I understood was failure is part of the process.
Oh, yes.
And that's a big thing. It's not like, look at how good we did. We've got a shiny new badge, and anything that we didn't do so good, we're not going to talk about. We'll hide under the in the closet over there. But it is about expect failure. It's okay. We will deal with it. We will help you with that.
Right. We're expecting you to fail inside of it. We want you to fail inside of it. And the reason being is so that you can see the different ways that we can set it up for your organization and make it work. A lot of times, you go into that day 2 meeting and their scorecard's all green. Everything's on track. Everything's working. And you're like,
about.
You guys are full of shit.
Yeah.
No way. Like it completely blows you away. You walk in and I'd rather see some things off track so that we can make the course corrections and get back on track. And or you didn't set your targets high enough. Like you're really setting your benchmarks really low, and we need to push the envelope to get some people moving.
I think you hit on something really important right there, Deric. If you come in, everything looks good. There's a lot of fear sometimes around numbers-based systems. And so there tends to be a lot of pencil whipping and things like that to make me look better.
Mm-hmm.
I want to look better. I don't want to look bad to anybody in, these people. I don't want to look bad to Deric. I don't want to look bad to, the senior leadership who is spending the money to implement these things. So I'm going to make myself look just a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that comes from that vulnerability, that fear of failing. And what people don't understand is that failure is what drives success down the road. You don't learn if you're constantly winning, right? Or you tell yourself you're constantly winning, because in reality, you're not really constantly winning. You're just, buffaloing yourself essentially. But that's an important thing. But I want to ask you something else, Deric. When you go into one of these places to implement this, who do you look for? Who in the organization are you looking to talk with?
So generally the owner, founder, CEO, or COO type role.
So why is that important in your opinion?
Well, it has to be there because one, they have to choose to make a decision for the business, and two, nothing's going to change if they don't change it from the top. If you're the guy that's holding people accountable and you're not doing it, nobody's going to do it. It's going to be just like every other time when you go read a book and you find something cool and you go hand it to your next guy in charge and you say, implement it. And they say, implement what? And you say, the book. And they go, okay, he'll forget about it in 2 weeks. Like it just doesn't happen. And the problem, a lot with organizations is we have these visionaries, right, in charge. Usually the founder's like this big visionary that creates and is very creative. The problem with that is that visionaries are very pulsy, and visionaries are coming up with 20 ideas and only one of them are good out of the 20, right? But the problem is when they're going out as a visionary or an owner and talking to the junior people out there, the junior people are like, oh, the owner's telling me to implement this. So they're trying to, everybody's going 110 different directions with no organization, no idea of how to go. So like the way that we set up our accountability chart is we have our visionary and our integrator. So our visionary and integrators have their own meetings off away from everybody else every week and get clear on kind of some of the things that they're trying to build. And the implementer really keeps the pulse and builds the culture and keeps everybody accountable and kind of gets people motivated. The visionary is going to have the vision of the culture and how they want it to build and what the core values are and really who they are as a person, right? But it's very tough for them to implement it because they're just so surgy and constantly in the loop of creation.
That is so true, because there's a certain sense of the visionary. They will sabotage or derail themselves and their business if they are not, what you're talking about, integrating, looking at the facts, looking at the data. There's got to be a connection between the dream and the data, and it's got to be real. It can't be, and then the other thing I think they often do is, oh, you didn't do that. I'm so disappointed in you. It wasn't doable, man. What do you want?
Right.
We're coming up on 30 minutes here. This has been great having you, Deric. We got to have you back if you're open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, your company, tell them how.
Well, they can go to Exit Momentum and book a fit meeting with me. You can email me at deric@exitmomentum.com. You can call me if you want. I'm open to calls and texts. Phone number is 307-371-3683. Yep, that's a Wyoming number.
All right, great. Outstanding. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Rich, wrap it up for us.
All right. I hope that we've got a bunch of senior leaders that have been paying attention to what Deric has been offering here today, because, I got to tell you this one thing. William Conway, who is the guy that really introduced the Toyota manufacturing system, Dr. Deming, the United States, way back in 1980. He has this famous saying that when people started coming to him wondering what you're doing, Ford, Dow, General Motors, all these companies were coming to him to figure out what it was that he was doing with this Toyota manufacturing system. And he would tell people, the CEOs, he would only talk to the CEOs or the senior leadership of the company, and he would tell them, if you can't come see me, send nobody, because you're not serious. And so that was something I think that's very important as we wrap this up for these senior leaders who are listening to us, to understand it's your job to implement these tools. It's your job to implement, culture is a top-down function. So thank you, Deric. Excellent conversation. Look forward to talking to you further about some things going on. But once again, we are at the end of another Mainline Executive Coaching ACT. Hope you've got something great out of this episode. And Maikel, who are we shouting out to?
I think there's some interesting people we've got all over the freaking world that are watching us. Saudi Arabia, for instance, Croatia, they're watching us. People in South Wales. All you good folks out there in the hinterlands. I guess to you, we're in the hinterlands. I guess that's how that works. All point of view, right? But wherever you are, God bless you. Stay with it. Work hard. Work smart. Keep watching. We'll do what we can to support you and encourage you. So all the best to all of you.
Okay. All right. Once again, take care of each other, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. All the best.